Okay, so let's continue from where we finished in the fourth lesson, which was the last lesson. So if you haven't seen any of the other lessons, you might want to watch them first. Today's lesson will be about past tenses, all of them. The last lesson was about all the present tenses. Now I want you to understand that all of the present tenses do bear a relation to all of our past tenses. So I gave some signal words, by which I mean if you see these words, it's a good idea to use these tenses, usually, 99% of the time. There are some exceptions which I'll talk about today. But I spoke about present tenses last time, do, does in present simple, and I gave these signal words and I explained that it was actions which happened repeatedly, and that's why I drew this picture. And repeated actions are kind of finished, in a sense, they're complete actions. I then went on to talk about present continuous, which I said were unfinished actions, and I drew it like this as a picture, which means this is now, this line here, and the action is unfinished, it's in the process, it's incomplete. And at the moment would be a signal word. I then talked about present perfect. I gave lots of signal words, difficult tense this one. And I want you to remember that really with both of these tenses, with have done and with have been doing, you need to remember that they are both for unfinished periods of time. I would use have done or has done for stative verbs. If you don't know what stative verbs are, please watch video number 1 in this series where I talk about stative verbs. So stative verbs are for have done, present perfect simple. Dynamic verbs, which often emphasize duration, I would use as for have been doing. Okay, and that's the best way to understand the difference between these two tenses, because they both refer to unfinished periods of time. But this one concentrates on the result, and this one concentrates on duration. Now, the same applies for many of the past tenses. Let's look at past simple, which is of course did. We're going to look at past now. Past simple with did. Past continuous, which I hope you know is was or were doing. Okay. Past perfect, which I hope you know is, past perfect is had done, or had gone, or had been, had and the third form, and past perfect continuous is had been doing. Okay, let's just quickly change that. Had been doing. Okay, so that's how we make the past tenses. I'm going to keep the signal words mostly the same, because actually the signal words still apply. It's just we use these 4 tenses when we are telling stories. I have to emphasize that they're often called narrative tenses, and this is because when you narrate, you're telling a story. These are story tenses. I like to use that word, it's simple. Story tenses, they're tenses for when you give the different details of the story. Now, if you want to give consecutive details of a story, consecutive details, and when I say consecutive, I mean 1, then 2, then 3. Yeah, 1 happens, and then the next 2 happens, and then next 3 happens. So for consecutive moments, we must use past simple. And so if I can give a quick example, I woke up, brushed my teeth, and went to work. Woke up happened first, brushed my teeth happened second, and went to work happened third. Okay, that's how we use past simple. We very often know when with past simple and past continuous, and so a good signal word for both of these tenses is if we know when. Last week, 3 minutes ago, on Friday. We often use one of these tenses. Very often simple, but we may need continuous if the action is unfinished. If it's a finished action, use past simple, but if it's unfinished, you must use past continuous, and that means that there's one more signal word here, and it's when. And I wouldn't say at the moment, I would actually give at and a time expression. Let me give 2 examples, one for each of these. My friend called me when I was doing my homework, my friend called me, past simple, because that's finished. He called me, and that's here. If we call this part A is above. Okay, my friend called me when I was doing my homework. I hadn't finished the homework when he called me. So we must use past continuous. I was doing my homework. However, we also use past continuous if we give a time and we were in the middle of something at that time. So, for example, at 1 in the morning, 1 a.m, by the way, in English, 1 a.m, we say 1 in the morning usually, not 1 at night. Even though I agree it's dark outside and it's night. But at 1 in the morning, I was sleeping. Yeah, I was in the middle of sleeping. And that's what past continuous is. It's in the middle of something, in the middle of an action. Okay, these two should be fairly clear now. I hope that I can now make past perfect simple and continuous very clear. This, of course, is past perfect simple, had done. Past perfect continuous is had been doing, or had been going, had been playing. Now, still, stative verbs cannot be continuous. They cannot be in any form of continuous. So stative verbs will be here. Dynamic verbs of duration can often be here. But the thing to remember with story tenses is past perfect simple is, forget about unfinished period of time with the past perfect, although you can remember it for past perfect continuous. But let's just forget about that, because really it's a moment before past simple. A moment before past simple. I would also say, because I've mentioned it in another video, that we often see this form in reported speech. Let's put that in brackets here for both of these tenses. You see very often in reported speech. Let me give you an example of that right now. I told him I hadn't stolen the money. I told him I hadn't stolen the money. Now, I told him is here on the line, and I hadn't stolen is before I told him. I told him that I hadn't stolen the money before that moment when I told him. But we could do it with another reporting verb. The important thing is that hadn't stolen happened before I told him. Let me give you a different example. When I got to the car park, when I came to the car park, I saw, so past simple, because they are consecutive. When I came to the car park, I saw the car had been stolen. That would be past perfect simple. Someone had stolen the car. Yes, someone had stolen the car. Now, it's not just for steal, of course. The point is that when did somebody steal the car? Was it after I got to the car park or before? It was before I came to the car park and I saw. So we must use someone had stolen the car. It was before a past simple moment. But we could say someone had hit the car. Someone had scratched the car. They would all work also because it's before the I saw and it's before the I came as well. But remember about reported speech. I told him I hadn't stolen the money. I told him I hadn't met the woman before. Doesn't matter, but very often when we're talking about things, we say I said, or I told him, or I knew. We often refer to moments before I said and I told him. And so that's when we need the when we need the past perfect, very often with reported speech. Now, exactly the same logic for past perfect continuous, except now we're emphasizing duration. And so if I can give an example like, if I give the car park again, I could say, when I came to the car park, I saw my mum had been waiting for 45 minutes. Because had been waiting is duration. How long? For 45 minutes. She had been waiting for 45 minutes. But it's not only with periods of time, although that is a good thing to remember. With a period of time, for how long since. Very often it's past perfect continuous. In fact, I would say always if the verb is dynamic. However, if the verb is stative, please put it in past perfect simple. Let me give you one more example with past perfect simple. I wasn't hungry because I had been eating all day. Yeah, I wasn't hungry. Why not? Because before I wasn't hungry, I had been eating all day. And we say had been eating, not eaten, because all day is a very long period of time. And when you want to emphasize duration, you must use this past perfect continuous. Okay, I hope that that's not too much of a mess for your heads. I hope that it's just a clear summary or a reminder for some of you of how these past tenses, story tenses I call them, how these story tenses work, because all of these really, I'm giving you the details of stories which happened to me. Doesn't matter if they're true or not true, they're still stories. Okay, I want to remind you that I'm doing this video on behalf of two large groups on Facebook and Vkontakte, very good groups for learning English. Learn English as easy as pie with Mojtabi Yakubi, and English with Pleasure on vk.com for Alexander Liebediev. Please look below for the links and you can go and join those groups. If you have any questions about any English tenses at all, please ask your questions under the video or on the groups where I post these videos, and I will answer your questions as best as I can and as fast as I can. Questions are good because they help us all understand, and believe me, these tenses are not simple. They're not simple for me, and I have been teaching them for a very long time, but still they're not simple. Anybody who says that tenses in English are simple, they are lying to you. But I hope that's made it somewhat clearer. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to my channel and look at some of my other videos afterwards if you've enjoyed this lesson. Thanks very much. Please subscribe if you've enjoyed this lesson and would like to receive more over the next few weeks. Here are some videos on phrasal verbs, auxiliary verbs, tenses, and verb forms as well, like gerunds and 2+ infinitive. Please watch them and try the quizzes below the videos, and I hope that you improve.